Ah, yes. We all know football, the beautiful, wild sport we love, or hate if you're a Texans fan. American football has become a staple of American history, where it still integrates itself into modern culture primarily through college football and the NBA. It's created some of the most iconic moments in sports, has become a stage to some of the greatest music performances of all time. Michael Jackson. And all of this history makes it seem like football has been around forever. I mean, really, your father and your grandfather and probably his father all had a favorite football team growing up. And this all begs the question, when was football created and how and why?
When college boys by the tens of thousands start kicking like gories and exercising like desperate patrons, it's a sure sign.
Now, football is nothing new and started a very long time ago, trust me. All the way back in the 19th century. Those early history is pretty debatable. It's often cited that football evolved from rugby and soccer, where it inherited similar rules. Rugby, very similar to how football is today. It's a sport where two competing teams fight for control of the ball and can score by either running through the goal area or kicking the ball through a set of goalposts. If we're being honest though, football may have originated as far back as ancient Greek times, but they're not even so sure about that. And that time they used to play a similar game called Episkairos, but let's just focus on the United States history, please. It'll take a long time if we talk about Greek history. It was largely unorganized, but became organized after an athlete and coach at Yale University named Walter Camp, often regarded as the father of football, created several organized rules so it's able to be played fairly by more people. Eventually, the first ever American football game was played between Rutgers and Princeton in New Brunswick, New Jersey, in which Rutgers won 6-4. So you may be asking, why was football created in the first place? All right, I'll get to that, all right? I know that's the main thing. I'll get to that. Gosh. Anyways, another question you might be wondering, hopefully, is how did American football become the way it is today? Well, even before this football was a thing, which is a very long time ago, there was a much more dangerous, injury-inducing, terrifying sport that resulted in loss of property, damages, and even death. They called it mob football, or even more barbaric sounding, medieval football. Now imagine football, but just straight up no rules, but only an objective. Bring the ball, which is an inflated pigskin, to the end of the opponent's town. Well, actually there was one rule, which was to not commit murder or manslaughter. That was the only rule. This is a game played from the early 19th century to where Walter Camp added new rules. Despite the new rules, however, it was still very dangerous even up to the late 1800s. In 1890 alone, the sport killed 23 people and severely injured 159. It got so bad that President Theodore Roosevelt had to get involved. Rules called for rule changes and reforms such as the legal forward pass. Anyways, that ended the era of a dangerous, life-threatening game of football being played. It began a brand new era of professional football, where people were actually getting paid for it. William Pudge Heffelfinger was the first professional football player to be paid, where he was paid $500 to represent the Allegheny Athletic Association. And by 1897, the Trove Athletic Association became the first team to pay all of its players. Soon after that, there were professional teams playing against each other. And soon after that, in 1920, the league we all know, unless you're a Texans fan, which I feel so bad for you, was created. The American Professional Football League, where it was only a handful of teams at the time, about 10 of them. Over the century, the league started to slowly expand, and eventually it touted a brand new name we definitely recognize, the National Football Association, otherwise known as the NFL. And the rest is history. All right, I hope you all enjoyed the video. Wait 1 second. You thought we were finished, huh? Come on now, we haven't even answered the most important question. Why was football created? You see, the early 20th century saw many wars happen between the United States and other countries, the most infamous being World War I and II. At that time, the United States would draft a lot of young and middle-aged men, requiring all men from 21 to 45 years old to register for the draft. Those that were selected for the draft were required to serve at least 1 year in the military. Even in the quiet periods where the United States wasn't involved in any wars, the country was still uneasy that they'll get pulled in at any of the wars happening in Europe. And these fears were heightened in 1940 when Nazi Germany completely devastated and defeated France in only 6 weeks, referred to as the Fall of France, which resulted in the draft being expanded to all men between 18 and 45 years old being required to register. By the end of World War II, 50 million men had been registered for the draft. And of those men, 10 million had been inducted into the military. During the war and even afterwards, a lot of men were institutionalized by the war mindset, having nowhere to channel their passion and patriotism until they met football. So if it isn't obvious enough, football is about as close as you can get to a battlefield without actually being in one. You can still be just as aggressive and still get just as much of the adrenaline rush. But it was also a place for them to cooperate and defeat the opposition. It was like a war for them, but their lives were constantly on the line, and they can always live to fight another day. This is what gave rise to the Army and Navy dynasties of the mid-20th century, which is what many people refer to as the golden age of football.
Before the game at Philadelphia's Municipal Stadium, the middies from the Naval Academy take command of the field. Slightly an underdog in face of a strong cadet team. Army's a bit overconfident, and spirits run high, but they're soon dampened by the weather, plus Bob Lennett's place kick from the 22, which splits the goalposts, and Navy leads 3-0.
From 1930 to 1960, the Army won 3 championships, produced 3 Heisman Trophy winners, which is the football's version of the Most Valuable Player award, and earned national appeal. Several college teams across the nation admired them and mirrored their championship play style. Their coaching style, motivation, and grit transformed the image of football and led to what football looks like today. In conclusion, for real this time, football is like a time capsule. It serves as a way to see what patriotism looks like without the threat of losing your life. What makes football so unique from all the other sports is it possesses a deep history woven into the good and bad times of America. It's not just a sport made for fun. Instead, it was necessary for the progression of America as we know it. People don't realize that a lot of what we have today probably wouldn't exist if it weren't for football. From businesses to franchises to clubs, many other things wouldn't exist, or at least would be significantly different today. A lot could have happened, but instead we created what we have today, a big, booming, sprawling nation filled with hustling and bustling culture. Much of the hard-working culture that exists today in modern America resulted from football or the military. American football is a sport that shall live as long as the nation lives. I mean, after all, it's literally called American football. But also because it's deeply rooted in American history in a way that we can never forget, and its impact is still residing among us today. Football has come a long way, and as a nation, we've come a long way with it.